Hold on for a moment, because what you are about to hear was not placed before you by accident. This is about you. Yes, you, the one who stayed quiet when others expected you to fight. The one who swallowed pain so deeply that even the people closest to you never fully understood what was breaking inside. The one who watched injustice unfold, and chose silence, not because you were weak, but because your spirit knew that not every battle deserves your voice. And that is what they never understood. They mistook your silence for surrender. They believed your calm meant they had defeated you. They assumed that because you did not expose what happened, because you did not retaliate, because you did not drag their name through the same darkness they brought to yours, that somehow they had won. But listen carefully. Silence is not always defeat. Sometimes silence is the sound of someone mastering their power. Because there are seasons in life when speaking too early ruins everything. There are moments when defending yourself to the wrong people only drains your energy. And there are injustices so deep, so deliberate, that no explanation could ever make blind people see. So you chose stillness. Not because it did not hurt. Not because it did not matter. Not because you forgot. No. You remained silent because something in you knew that truth does not beg to be believed. Pause here and feel that. Truth does not beg. Truth waits. And while they laughed, while they twisted the story, while they painted themselves innocent and painted you as the villain, you stood in the fire without saying a word. Do you understand how rare that is? Most people react. Most people explode. Most people lose themselves trying to prove they were wronged. But you carried your pain in private. You let heaven, time, and consequence handle what your hands refused to touch. That choice changed everything. Because now something is shifting. Not loudly. Not all at once. But quietly, undeniably, the illusion they built is beginning to crack. The people who misunderstood you are starting to notice inconsistencies. The ones who doubted your character are beginning to question what they were told. And those who participated in your mistreatment, they are slowly discovering that peace does not stay with people who create chaos for others. Here is the truth they never expected. The person who was wronged in silence often rises in power while the one who caused the harm unravels in noise. And your rise has already begun. You may not see it fully yet. That is because transformation often starts beneath the surface. A seed underground looks like nothing. Until suddenly it splits the earth open. What if this season of quiet was never punishment? What if it was preparation? What if every tear you cried behind closed doors? Every night you questioned your worth? Every moment you wondered why justice stayed silent? Was shaping you into someone unrecognizable? Because hear this clearly. The version of you they hurt is not the version of you that is about to emerge. That version is gone. And the one replacing it? Stronger. Sharper. Untouchable in ways they cannot comprehend. Stay with this thought. Sometimes the greatest revenge is not exposure. It is evolution. Sometimes your breakthrough begins the moment you stop asking, "Why did they do this to me?" and start asking, "What is this pain preparing me for?" That question changes everything. Because suddenly you realize. The betrayal taught discernment. The rejection taught self-respect. The injustice taught restraint. The silence taught inner strength. What they meant to use against you became the very thing that built you. And this is only the beginning. Because soon, the same people who overlooked your pain will witness your peace. The same people who underestimated your silence will witness your elevation. The same people who thought they buried your story will realize they buried a seed, not a person. And seeds do not die underground. They multiply in darkness. So if you have been wondering whether your silence was weakness, it was not. If you have been wondering whether justice forgot your name, it did not. If you have been wondering whether the pain was pointless, it was not. Something is being arranged behind the curtain of your patience. And in the next part, you will understand why the people who wronged you are beginning to feel the shift before you even speak a word. Because the quiet around you is not emptiness. It is the sound of destiny moving. A strange thing happens when those who hurt you realize your silence was never weakness. They begin to feel unsettled. Not because you said anything. Not because you exposed them. Not because you sought revenge. But because your peace became louder than their lies. And that is where the story changes. You see, the people who wronged you expected your breakdown. They expected emotional messages, angry reactions, desperate attempts to defend yourself. They were prepared for chaos. They were prepared for war. What they were not prepared for was your restraint. They were not prepared for you to disappear into your own growth. They were not prepared for you to heal in private. They were not prepared for your silence to remain steady while their conscience grew louder each day. Because whether they admit it or not, people remember how they treated those who did not deserve the pain. And no matter how confident someone appears on the outside, there is a private place within every person where truth cannot be escaped. That is where your name still echoes. Late at night. In quiet moments. In conversations they never expected to have. Because the universe has a way of forcing reflection onto those who avoided accountability. And now, they are beginning to replay everything. The words they said. The assumptions they made. The loyalty they betrayed. The version of you they judged without understanding. One by one, the memories return. And here is the part no one tells you. Sometimes the deepest consequence for wrongdoing is not public embarrassment. It is private realization. It is waking up one day and understanding. The person you mistreated was genuine. The heart you wounded was loyal. The soul you doubted was pure. That realization arrives slowly. Then all at once. And when it does, regret becomes its own punishment. But do not misunderstand this moment. This is not about waiting for someone to suffer. This is about recognizing that truth has its own timing. You did not need to force justice. You only needed to outlast deception. And you have. Every day you chose healing over bitterness. You won. Every time you refused to become cruel because others were cruel to you. You won. Every moment you protected your heart without poisoning your spirit. You won. That is strength most people never develop. Pause here and think about that. How many people can be wounded deeply and still remain kind? How many can be betrayed and still choose integrity? How many can be misunderstood and still trust that truth will surface in time? Very few. That is why your path feels different. Because you were never being shaped for ordinary things. There is something uncommon about a person who can suffer injustice without becoming injustice. That kind of soul carries power. And if this message is finding you at the exact moment you needed it, take that as your reminder to keep going. If it resonates deeply, leave a comment with the word "rising" below. Not for anyone else, but as a quiet declaration to yourself of who you are becoming. And if these words speak to your spirit, share them with someone else who may need this today. Because your rise is not random. It is the result of everything you survived without losing yourself. But listen carefully, because something even more important is unfolding. The injustice done to you did more than reveal other people. It revealed you to yourself. Before this pain, perhaps you underestimated your resilience. Perhaps you thought your heart was too soft for this world. Perhaps you believed being gentle meant being fragile. Now you know better. Now you know softness and strength can live in the same soul. Now you know grace can survive betrayal. Now you know peace can stand in the presence of chaos and remain unshaken. That awareness changes a person forever. Because once someone realizes their strength, they can never again be manipulated by fear. So while others wonder why you became quieter, why you became more selective, why your energy shifted, they do not realize they are witnessing your transformation. You are no longer the version of yourself who tolerated disrespect to keep peace. You are no longer the version who explained your worth to those committed to misunderstanding you. You are no longer the version who chased closure from people incapable of honesty. No. You have evolved beyond that. And in the next part, we will step into the moment where everything turns. When the injustice that once wounded you becomes the exact reason your life begins opening in ways no one expected. Because sometimes, the very pain that tried to break you becomes the force that introduces you to your true power. And now, here is the moment everything begins to make sense. Because the pain that once felt like an ending was never the end. It was the separation. The dividing line between who you were and who you were destined to become. Read that again in your spirit. Some people lose themselves after injustice. They become bitter, guarded, hard. They let betrayal rewrite their identity. But you did something different. You bled. Yet you rebuilt. You broke. Yet you kept your heart conscious. You were tested in silence. And instead of collapsing, you transformed. That is why what comes next in your life will not look ordinary. Because ordinary rewards do not follow extraordinary endurance. Something is being prepared for the version of you who survived what should have destroyed you. Not because suffering automatically earns reward, but because pain refined you into someone capable of carrying more. Think about it. Had certain people not betrayed you, would you have learned discernment this deeply? Had they not underestimated you, would you have discovered how powerful your quiet confidence could become? Had they not walked away, would you have ever become this independent, this focused, this aware? Sometimes life removes comfort, so that purpose can enter. And that is what happened here. The injustice was not your identity. It was your initiation. It introduced you to the part of yourself that had been waiting to awaken. Now notice what is changing. You are harder to manipulate. Harder to distract. Harder to break with temporary opinions. Why? Because once someone survives being misunderstood at their core, they stop living for approval. That is freedom. And freedom terrifies people who once benefited from your self-doubt. They can feel it. They notice your boundaries now. They notice your energy is different. They notice you no longer explain yourself endlessly. They notice your peace is protected. And perhaps the most powerful part of all, you no longer need them to understand what they did. Because healing reaches a sacred point, where explanation becomes unnecessary. You simply outgrow the need to be validated by those who failed to value you. That is the real victory. Not revenge. Not proving them wrong. Not hearing apologies that may never come. The real victory is becoming so aligned with your worth that their treatment of you no longer defines your reflection. Pause for a moment. Can you feel how far you have come? The old version of you would have begged for clarity. The old version of you would have replayed every moment, searching for what you could have done differently. The old version of you might have mistaken mistreatment for something you deserved. But not anymore. Now you know. What happened to you revealed them. Not your value. What they chose said everything about their character. Not your worth. What they did may have wounded you. But it did not diminish you. And that understanding will carry you into your next chapter. A chapter where peace matters more than performance. Where discernment matters more than attention. Where purpose matters more than proving anything to anyone. So if you are hearing this while still waiting for justice, still waiting for answers, still wondering when the full truth will be known, hear this carefully. Not every truth needs public recognition to be real. Not every injustice needs dramatic closure to be resolved. Not every wrong needs your reaction to be corrected. Sometimes your greatest triumph is simply becoming unrecognizable to the pain that once ruled you. And that is who you are becoming now. A person of depth, of discernment, of calm power, of earned wisdom. The injustice that touched your life did not destroy your future. It redirected it toward stronger boundaries, toward clearer vision, toward deeper self-respect, toward a life built on truth instead of illusion. So walk forward knowing this. Your silence was never weakness. Your pain was never wasted. Your patience was never unnoticed. Everything you endured was shaping the person standing here now. Wiser, stronger, unshaken. And when they look at you later, when they see the peace on your face, the discipline in your walk, the power in your presence, they will understand too late. The one they tried to wound became the one they could never reach again. But before this story closes, there is one truth still left to reveal. The people who caused your pain may one day watch your life from a distance and wonder how someone they wounded became stronger instead of smaller. They will not understand it at first, because many expect pain to reduce a person, to make them fearful, To make them distrustful. To make them permanently less than they were before. Yet somehow, you became more aware, more intentional, more disciplined, more impossible to deceive. That is the paradox of your journey. What was sent to weaken you became the very force that sharpened you. And now your future carries a different weight. You are not entering the next chapter as someone naive. You are not entering it desperate for validation. You are not entering it willing to abandon yourself just to be accepted. No. You are entering it awake. And awakened people move differently. They notice what others miss. They hear what is not being said. They recognize energy before words. They trust their discernment before appearances. That awareness is not accidental. It was earned. Every disappointment trained your perception. Every betrayal refined your standards. Every injustice taught you the cost of ignoring your intuition. So the next time life places something in front of you, a relationship, an opportunity, a decision, a crossroads, you will not approach it as the person you once were. You will approach it with wisdom. And wisdom changes outcomes. That is why this chapter mattered so much. Because your future required a stronger version of you than your past had created. Some lessons only pain can teach. Some vision only suffering can sharpen. Some strength only solitude can build. And now, you carry all three. So when the next blessing enters your life, you will not sabotage it through insecurity. You will not settle for less because you fear being alone. You will not mistake inconsistency for love or confusion for destiny. You will know better. That is what healing gives you. Not perfection, but clarity. If these words have met you at the exact right time, if some part of your spirit feels seen in this message, subscribe and stay connected for the next journey. And if your heart has carried a silent battle no one fully understands, leave a comment that says, "I remain true." A reminder to yourself that your integrity survived what tried to break it. Because that matters more than you know. Now hear this final truth of this chapter. The greatest consequence for those who wronged you is not punishment. It is witnessing the life you build after they failed to destroy your spirit. It is seeing your confidence return, your joy return, your peace return, your purpose return. It is realizing that despite everything they did, you still became who you were meant to become. And perhaps one day they will reflect in silence, the same way you once did. Perhaps they will wonder how they misjudged someone so deeply. Perhaps they will regret what pride would not let them admit. Perhaps they will finally understand the value of what they mishandled. But by then, you will be too far ahead to need their understanding. Because healing eventually carries you to a place where closure is no longer something you seek. It becomes something you embody. You become the proof that survival can turn into strength. That silence can turn into power. That injustice can turn into awakening. So walk forward now with your head higher. Not because what happened did not matter, but because it no longer controls you. Walk knowing your peace is earned. Your wisdom is earned. Your boundaries are earned. Your strength is earned. And never forget, some of the most powerful people in the world are those who were deeply hurt, yet chose evolution over revenge. That is your story. And this is only the beginning. And if you think the story ends with your healing, look closer. Because healing was never the final destination. It was preparation. Preparation for the moment your life begins to reflect the strength you built in silence. Preparation for the opportunities that only arrive when a person has matured enough to receive them. Preparation for the relationships that require discernment, not desperation. Preparation for the future that could never be trusted to the version of you who still doubted your worth. This is where everything changes. Because many people believe the reward after pain is simply peace. But sometimes, the reward is far greater than peace. Sometimes the reward is alignment. A life that finally matches the depth of who you have become. Read that slowly. Not just survival. Not just recovery. Alignment. The right people. The right timing. The right environments. The right opportunities. Why? Because once you stop chasing what was never meant for you, life has room to place what is. And that is what your silence made possible. While others were obsessed with controlling narratives, you were being repositioned. While they focused on appearances, you were being refined. While they celebrated too early, thinking your quiet meant your story was over. Your real story had not even started yet. Let that sink in. Some people meet the strongest version of you only after they lost access to the version of you they took for granted. That is not revenge. That is consequence. And now the doors opening before you will not look like the doors behind you. These next chapters will demand more of you. But they will also honor more of you. No more shrinking to fit spaces that disrespect your light. No more lowering your standards to keep temporary people comfortable. No more betraying your own intuition just to avoid disappointing others. That era is over. Because once someone learns the price of abandoning themselves, they stop doing it. You learned that lesson the hard way. But now it belongs to you forever. And perhaps the most beautiful part of all. Your pain has given you something many never acquire. The ability to recognize what is genuine. You can now feel the difference between attention and respect. Between chemistry and compatibility. Between empty promises and consistent truth. Between people who admire your light. And people who only want access to it. That awareness will protect your future. It will save you years. It will save your peace. It will save your heart from repeating old cycles disguised in new faces. So if you ever wonder whether the struggle changed you, yes. It changed you profoundly. But not into someone broken. Into someone awakened. Into someone who understands that not every loss is a tragedy. Not every ending is failure. Not every injustice is meant to destroy. Sometimes, it is meant to redirect. Toward the life you were supposed to build all along. And one day, perhaps sooner than you think, you will look around at the peace you created. The standards you upheld. The life you rebuilt from ashes. And you will realize something breathtaking. Had everything gone the way you once wanted, you might never have become this person. The strength. The wisdom. The boundaries. The discernment. The self-respect. All of it was born here. In the season that nearly broke you. So honor that chapter. Not because it was easy. Not because it was fair. But because it forged you. And when people ask how you became so calm, so wise, so difficult to shake, you will know the answer. You survived what was meant to silence you, and turned it into your power. This was never just about injustice. It was about transformation. And the person emerging from this chapter is someone the past can no longer control. And now, the final truth. One day, without warning, you will wake up and realize something has changed. Not around you. Within you. The memories that once triggered pain will no longer hold the same weight. The names that once stirred emotion will feel distant. The injustice that once replayed in your mind will no longer control the atmosphere of your day. And in that quiet realization, you will understand. You made it through. Not by forgetting. Not by pretending it never happened. Not by receiving every apology you deserved. But by becoming greater than what hurt you. That is the victory no one can take from you. Because true healing is not when the past disappears. It is when the past loses authority over your present. And you are closer to that moment than you know. There will come a day when you hear updates about people who once wounded you. And feel nothing but distance. No anger. No bitterness. No urge to revisit old wounds. Only clarity. Only gratitude that life removed what could not grow with you. That day will shock you. Because for so long, the pain felt permanent. For so long, the injustice felt unfinished. For so long, you thought healing meant getting answers. But healing was never about answers. It was about release. Releasing the need to understand why people lacked integrity. Releasing the need to make unfair people fair. Releasing the hope that those who harmed you will suddenly become who they should have been. And in releasing all of that, you reclaim yourself. That is where peace lives. Not in changed people. Not in rewritten history. Not in perfect closure. Peace lives in the moment you stop carrying what is no longer yours. So hear this now, as this journey closes. You do not need everyone to understand your story. For your story to matter. You do not need every truth acknowledged. For truth to remain truth. You do not need everyone to regret hurting you. For your value to be undeniable. Your worth was never dependent on the awareness of those who lacked the vision to see it. And perhaps that is the final lesson this injustice came to teach. Never measure your value by the treatment of people who were incapable of honoring it. Measure it by who you became. Despite everything. Look at yourself. You are wiser than before. Calmer than before. More discerning than before. More powerful in spirit than before. The version of you reading this now would be unrecognizable to the version who first entered the pain. That is growth. That is evolution. That is what happens when someone refuses to let suffering define them. So from this moment forward, walk differently. Walk like someone who has nothing left to prove. Walk like someone who survived hidden battles. Walk like someone whose silence carried more power than most people's noise. Walk like someone who knows their peace is precious. Because the next chapter of your life does not belong to the wounded version of you. It belongs to the awakened one. And when the world meets that version, steady, wise, self-respecting, impossible to manipulate, they will not fully understand what it took to build that strength. But you will. You will remember the nights no one saw, the tears no one knew about, the restraint no one praised, the battles you fought in silence. And you will smile quietly. Because what once felt like the end of you became the making of you. This is not the story of someone who was broken. This is the story of someone who turned injustice into power, pain into wisdom, silence into strength, and walked away transformed.